Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Stand Up Speakeasy. I'm your host, Sareth, and we had a little bit of technical issues with my camera and my microphone, so that's why the screen's a little bit blurry. But we'll make it work this time around and see if I can troubleshoot it for the next interviews. But what I'm doing with these is raising funds for my fellow comics. And I was supposed to go on tour at the Central Time Zone. We're also raising funds for their favorite charities and nonprofit organizations too with these interviews. And so we're stockpiling them up until in January, but luckily for you, and luckily for me, we're doing it all live for the time being. And so that way you can interact in the comment section below, but be nice to us. So that being said, my guest today is Liz Greenwood. Hey Liz, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. You're welcome, indeed. And so I was checking out your bio and all that good stuff, and I was really like blown away by what you've done, and so what made you pick the charity that we're donating and all that good stuff for?
Oh, sure. The charity I picked is the Southern Poverty Law Center, and I think it's a really important charity all the time, but I think especially with the election coming up, and I think there's going to be a lot of legal battles coming up with that, and just with voting, and just generally with all that's been happening with protests and things like that. So I think it's a really important charity. Or nonprofit, I guess. I don't even know if I call it a charity, like a nonprofit for making sure that like we keep our rights as like the scene gets a little dicey politically. So it's like one of many really important charities. I think I've really like upped my level of donating this year based on everything that's happened. So it's hard to pick one, but that's one that I care about.
Awesome. It's been a wild year for all of us, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Most definitely. And you're a Chicago-based stand-up comedian, and I love that city. And they've always treated me well. When I went there for my two shows, they treated me quite well. And if COVID didn't happen, I was planning on going on tour and interviewing as many comics as I can. And but there's a silver lining because I get to sit down and interview y'all with but with like my interviews usually last 10 to 20 minutes in person, but I get to hang out and find out more about you on a business level with the stand up. So, with that being said, you performed all over the city at venues such as Zany's and the Laugh Factory. And what are your favorite stories from those two venues?
um yeah, that's a good question. I favorite stories from venues. I think like so both of them are venues where I'm still at the level of doing like a guest spot, and one of my favorite introductions from the Laugh Factory was Kelly Howard is a very like cool and funny and successful comic in Chicago. And when you do a guest, I was doing a guest spot at the Laugh Factory at like one of the like Saturday primetime shows, and it was like a full house, and I was really nervous. And the way she brought me up for my set, she was like, this next comic, sometimes we're really lucky and we get people who just drop in for a couple of minutes and you're gonna really love her. And she like built me up like I was somebody who they were lucky to see, as opposed to somebody who was lucky to be doing these 5 minutes. And everybody was really excited like before I even started, and it was just like a really like gracious way of bringing up somebody who is like nervous and kind of doing that big of a show for the first time, and it really put me at ease. So I really like appreciated that, and it was a really good lesson for me in terms of hosting, is like the way people will respond to a comic like can depend a lot on how they are introduced, and so you can really like make or break somebody's set by like what you do as a host. So it made me think about like ways to be a host better as well too. So it was a cool lesson, but it also just like made my show a lot more fun.
Indeed, most definitely. And you performed at over 20 festivals across the country, which is amazing, including San Francisco Sketch Fest. What was the feeling like when you got selected and was able to perform at San Francisco Sketch Fest or SF Sketch Fest?
Yeah, Sketchfest was great. I like anytime I get to do a show somewhere like where I used to live and where I still know people, it's really fun to be able to invite my friends. Like, especially with Sketchfest, there was one show that I think like probably like 10 or 15 people I hadn't seen in a while like came out to this show, and that's just like so much fun. It's a really cool festival too, because they have people of so many different levels. Like, they have a lot of spots for more up and coming, and then obviously like the headliners are all like super established folks. So then like when you go to the after party, it's like, oh, there's celebrities here. Which was cool to see, like people that I look up to just like hanging out. But no, it was fun. It was well organized. It was fun to like be back in a city that I hadn't been to in a while. And I think San Francisco's a really fun scene. It's like, that's actually, like you mentioned, like one of the biggest things that sucks about the pandemic is all the different places I was hoping to travel like in the spring and in the summer, and that just like hasn't been possible. But we're figuring out new ways of doing things, as you mentioned. So.
Most definitely,
Yeah.
indeed. And so, you were also part of the HBO Women in Comedy Fest. What was that like?
Yeah, that's actually really a similar story, because that's in Boston, which is another city I used to live in. So I've done that festival a couple of times, and it's fun, one, to go back to Boston, which is the city I love, but two, that's a festival where I've met so many really great comics from all around the country, and it's a really fun show, and again, a festival, and they give you like a lot of different shows with different people, so you get to meet a lot of people, which is like one of the best parts of festivals for me. Another interesting thing about the Women in Comedy Festival for me was that it's like the fest is like 90% women and 10% not women, and so like most shows that I did would have a lineup that was like 9 or 7 or some number of women and then one dude. And it was interesting to like talk to the dudes who are on the festival of like, how does this experience feel for you? And a lot of them were like, I'm starting to understand in a way that I didn't understand before, like what it's like to be the only woman on the lineup, which is often the case when you're a woman in comedy. And it was like, it's one thing to say like, look at this lineup, it's only one woman, but like when you're actually the one person who stands out as being different, you get that experience personally. It's like a bigger lesson, I feel like. So my friend and I used to run, we stopped doing this, we used to run a show called Token, and the deal was there was only one white man per show, and everybody else was a comic who didn't identify as a white man. And so I was sort of like trying that. I got that idea from the Women in Comedy Festival. So we did that for a couple of years, and then the bar decided to go in a different direction, as often happens with bar shows.
Indeed, most definitely. And Boston sounds like a cool city and such a rich history of comedy. I mean, it's amazing, like Bill Burr and all those folks up there. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty awesome. I've always wanted to go, but they said that the streets are really confusing, so I don't want to get lost.
They are.
Indeed. Most definitely. And when I went to Chicago, I'm like, I'll just hop on a train and it'll take me to the right place. So it's easier to get around in Chicago than it is in Boston.
Oh, for sure.
Like. Most definitely. And you've also performed at the Cleveland Comedy Festival, where you were named Best of the Fest. What was that like, winning Best of the Fest at the Cleveland Comedy Festival?
That was a surprise. It was fun. They basically, I guess they do a bunch of like showcase shows, and then they name like 2 people from each show to be in the Best of the Fest showcase. And so I got to do an extra show, and I won some money, which usually a festival is like you lose money going to a festival, so that was cool. It was fun. I had never been to Cleveland before, and I actually enjoyed it a lot. It's a much cooler city than the reputation that it has, I think, which is generally my experience anyway. I'm not originally from the Midwest, and I think generally places I've been in the Midwest have turned out to be more cool and fun than I expected them to be.
Indeed. I've noticed that about a lot of cities. Like, I'm from Colorado myself, and it's Pueblo, Colorado. And like, we have that stigma around our city, and it's like, everyone just bashes us, but we're like the coolest little town ever. Indeed. But I totally dig it for sure. And I wanted you there's 20 other festivals that you were a part of. Do you remember all 20 all the other ones that we didn't name?
Oh gosh. Let's see. So I've done, I guess if I can think in order, there's Laugh Fest in Grand Rapids, the MMJ Fest in Fort Wayne, the Women in Comedy Fest, the She-Dot Festival in Toronto, Out of Bounds in Austin. I did Sketch Festival. That's one I named already, I guess. North Carolina Comedy Festival, Orlando Fest, Burning Bridges, Whiskey Bear, San Diego Comedy Fest. I've done Chicago Women's Fest, Chicago Nerd Comedy Fest, which is something that we have. Now I'm getting off track. The Cleveland one, Floodwater, West Side Comedy Fest. Which ones haven't I? Oh, Lady Laughs in Madison. I might have counted some twice because I did them more than once. I feel like I'm up to like 17 or 18. I will keep thinking.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Wait. Yeah. No. Okay. That's all I can remember right now. Now that's gonna like drive me crazy.
Indeed, that's quite a like list. That's amazing. So, indeed, I went to the Orlando Indie Comedy Festival. I think a few years ago when it was on, and I remember going to the Late Breakfast.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I think that's like another Chicago, production. So, that was a pretty neat experience for sure. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yep. And but I was hoping to stay longer, but man, there was like they were all scattered all over the place. But hopefully they bring it back. It'd be pretty rad.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
Indeed, most definitely. And so you've also produced your first solo show, a Trauma Rama, a story of recovery. What's the story of a Trauma Rama?
So Trauma Rama is a solo show about kind of so in a couple years ago, this is like a very dark, less lighthearted story, but a couple years ago, I got into a car that I thought was my Uber, but it was just a random person who was trying to, I don't know, kidnap people, whatever, but it was not an Uber. And when I tried to when I realized what was going on, I tried to get out, and the driver beat me up, but I somehow got away. And I honestly don't remember exactly what happened because when something like that happens, you don't necessarily remember every detail. But so the show is about the process of healing from that. So I actually don't talk directly about the assault very much in the show. It's more about dealing with the police and dealing with recovering from the PTSD and what the different symptoms of PTSD are, and then sort of having conversations with different people about it and sort of exploring the aftermath. Because one of the things that I learned through the process was I had actually been a crisis counselor for a long time, but having not gone through something personally, I didn't really understand all the changes that happen in your brain when you go through an assault. And it was just a really big lesson for me of now that I know how different I feel in these 6 months to a year, I need to be extending more grace to other people, because you don't really know what other people are going through. And so it was things where certain situations would just make me really angry or afraid because they certain things were triggering a memory of the assault. And it was I'm getting really angry, and it's you on the one hand the recovery process is figuring out how to control that, but on the other hand it's how can I be more thoughtful of other people who might be going through something like this, because I think everybody experiences some form of trauma at some point like everybody goes through hard times or like has difficulty. And even just like something as simple as like for a little, like after the assault happened, it was just very hard for me to get myself to like get up off the couch and go to things. And that's like a really common reaction to a trauma, because what like my therapist explained to me is like your brain usually like gets you to get up and get going because you're worried about the consequences. But when you've just had something so extreme happen to you, you're like, yeah, well, if I'm late to rehearsal, like it's not life or death. So like, whatever, I'm not going to like give you that signal to get moving. So I was like late to everything. And normally I'm not that kind of a person who just like shows up super late or blows things off. And I was like, wow, like now that I understand this process, I should be more like understanding of other people who might be dealing with stuff. So I wrote the show to kind of like explore that, and then also kind of explore like some of the misconceptions. Like I think people who have never dealt with the criminal justice system from the perspective of a survivor of a crime don't really understand like what that's like or how it feels. And like generally it wasn't very helpful. And so like I would get really frustrated because people would be like, well, oh, just tell the police and they'll fix it. And it's like, that's not how it always works. And so I wanted to like kind of illustrate that as well. So that was basically that's a summary of what my show. But there's just like I think it was like something where it would either, I was hoping that it would either resonate with people who had dealt with the same things I dealt with, or it would like sort of inform people who maybe hadn't had an experience like that of like what other people's experience might be like.
Indeed, I have a Uber or Lyft horror story in Chicago when I was like but it was like he took me to the wrong terminal and he had me take a bus to another terminal and he was just a complete jerk on the whole way there. And I was like really nervous. I'm like, goodness, are you guys all like the majority of the Ubers and Lyfts I took out there, they were really nice folks, but this last guy was just a complete meanie head. So it was like I was like, why are you so mean to me? We're trying to have a nice conversation on the way to the airport, and you're just, I don't know. But I didn't report him, and I was like, it's not worth, the bad karma and stuff. But it reminded me, like, your story reminded me of this. There's a scene in the movie Antebellum that reminded me of that. So don't watch that movie; it'll bring back, flashbacks.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a scary movie, but it'll get to you. But it's just don't watch it because of
Okay.
Indeed. Let's see here. For this next portion, these are the questions I would ask my fellow comics questions. If I were to go on tour, I did the same with all the comics that traveled to Florida, and with these questions. So, with that being said, the second segment is those questions. So, Liz, what inspired you to perform stand-up comedy?
I got into stand-up because I had been an actor for a long time on and off, and it was something that I had been passionate about for a long time. And a few years ago, I decided to pursue it more seriously. And one of the things that an acting coach suggested that I start doing was stand-up, because he, like, there's so many opportunities to perform stand-up. And like I had done some of my own writing, and he was like, if you can like turn your writing into stand-up, you're going to get so many opportunities to perform, because there's like so many mics every night in Chicago and so many different shows. It's just a big comedy city. And so like I wanted to get better at performing, and acting opportunities were like, you can do like maybe a couple of those a year, but like stand-up you can do every single day. So that was why I started learning more about stand-up, was really coming at it from like this background of like being a performer and a writer, and people suggesting that it was like a good way to do both of those things at once.
Indeed. And what was it feeling like when you first performed stand-up?
It was terrifying. So I started doing stand-up because I took a class that we have in Chicago called Feminine Comique, that's like a women's stand-up class. And so the first couple of times I performed was just like reading my jokes in class, and like that was honestly, it wasn't that scary because everyone in my class is very nice, but it was also scary just to like stand up in this like fully lit classroom and read like a stupid joke off of a notebook. And then I guess then I started doing open mics, and that was like, I just like didn't know really what to expect. So I was also very nervous about that, even though like it is not that high of stakes. like, cause I'd like show up like late and I'd be like one of the last people to go up, and there'd be like one really like tired host and like two people in the back not listening to me. And I was still just like, is this gonna work? But it was fun. And like FemCon, the class had like a end of class performance where a whole bunch of like really supportive people show up and are like, this is great, we love it. So like that's a good encouraging start.
Most definitely, indeed. And let's see here. What are your favorite comedy specials and comedy record albums?
um See, this is where I knew I was gonna question like this. I don't like follow comedy that much. The one comic that I really like knew of before I started doing comedy was Mitch Hedberg, and so I feel like his stuff always made me laugh.
Most
Yeah.
indeed, I love his Letterman performance. It was good stuff.
Yeah.
Indeed. And some of those folks have been on TV and film, and I want to know what your favorite sitcom, sketch shows, and comedy films are.
Yeah. My favorite, I think there's a lot of shows. I really like I've always loved Parks and Rec. I think that was like, I like shows that aren't like, that don't make me sad. Like Parks and Rec like is just like a generally like happy vibe. I also really like Veep because I think it's really smart, even though sometimes it is a little more disheartening about the political system, but I think it's a fun show, and there's a lot of things on there that like remind me of like people I know, so it's funny. Bridesmaids is maybe the only movie besides Titanic that I've seen in the theater twice, and I really enjoyed that. Let me think. So comedy, sketch. What did I watched I Think You Should Leave over the pandemic. So far was one of the, and I really enjoyed that. I've been like so bad about watching scripted stuff because I'm like a super big reality TV fan, and it's just like when I'm not in a good headspace, like watching reality TV is like the thing that sort of like lets me zone out and feel better. So like especially with like COVID, that's like mostly what I've been watching. But I really liked I Think You Should Leave. There's like a lot of jokes from that I just like say all the time.
Most definitely. And so I believe you mentioned Titanic, and my dad towards the end, he like we were in the crowd in the theater, and he ripped one, and he's like, Dad, this is supposed to be a sad moment. And I'm like, when he ripped one, it made my eyes water. So I was like, thanks a lot, Dad. And so it's not from the movie. It's not from the movie. Indeed. How about your favorite comedy films?
Comedy films. Let's see. I've seen Clueless is a movie that I've seen so many times. I've seen it like 20 or 30 times. Like since I was a kid, it was like my go-to. I still just like watch it regularly. I also, another movie I started watching when I was younger that I have watched a lot and really like is Clerks, because it's like so like mundane, I think, and I enjoy that. I like that kind of dry, goofy, I guess, as opposed to like, I don't know. That's a movie that I've always liked. Is there any? I'm trying to think if there's anything like newer that I've seen that I really liked, because like all my favorites, I really like high school movies that are centered around women. So like Clueless or Mean Girls or Booksmart was like, I guess, the most recent take on that genre, and I did enjoy that too. I can't even remember what I've seen super recently. I'm also a person who, like, when I go to the movies, I laugh at the wrong time. So Like, I saw Parasite, and that's a very dark movie, but I also, like, thought a lot of parts of it were really funny, and I was just, like, the asshole just, like, laughing while everybody else in the movie theater is, like, sad and freaking out. So I would actually consider that a comedy, and I think maybe the Golden Globes did, too. I don't remember, but...
Indeed. When Clueless came out, to this day, I still make references to that movie, and it's a quite quotable movie. It's like, goodness, there's so many quotes in this thing.
Yeah.
Indeed. And what's his name? Alicia Silverstone's brother doesn't even age one bit. He
Oh,
still
yeah,
looks
Paul
the same.
Rudd. He's still the same age he was in Clueless.
Yeah, it's nuts. And I used to live in LA, and I saw him at a premiere once, and my friend went crazy and just shouted out his name, and he waved back to her. It was pretty wild. Indeed. And if you can go on tour with any comedian, locally and internationally known, which comedians would you like to go on tour with?
Well, I was supposed to go on tour with my boyfriend, who is a comedian, this year. So we were supposed to go on multiple tours. So I would say that would be my number one, because that was what we were supposed to do. If I could, that's like a dumb answer though, because that's very, like, personal and not like a famous person. But that's my actual choice. But if I could go on tour with somebody, like, more famous, I don't know. It's like, I think, like, I would like to, I don't know. I'm not good at these, like, naming people things. I'm sorry. Anybody who'd be, like, fun. I think that would be more important for me than, like, the clout of opening for somebody. Important would be just, like, somebody who was, like, cool to hang out with.
Absolutely, I agree. They have to be a cool person off stage too. So,
Yeah.
indeed, most definitely. And if you can get roasted by 5 comedians, past and present, which comedians would you like to get roasted by?
Ooh. This is another one where it's hard, because I would rather just, like, I like getting roasted by people who know me really well, because then they're, like, more real. Like, I did a roast battle show with one of my friends who doesn't really do stand up so much anymore, but that was fun because she just, like, knew things about me, like, that were really, like, because if somebody doesn't know you, it's not interesting. I would like to get roasted by Andy Samberg, because I really enjoyed his roast of, I can't remember who, where he was just, like, very positive. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, he was just like, the Lord is here, roasted the Lord, or something dumb.
Indeed. Good stuff. Yep. And I remember seeing they have those rap battles, but they complimented each other rather than, made fun of each other. It was quite nice. It was a
Yeah.
pretty interesting twist for sure. So we'll have Adam roast you for the whole hour, I guess. Or toast you, if you will, for the whole hour. Awesome. And let's see here. Which other forms of comedy would you like to venture off into, like improv, sketch, comedy writing, acting, directing, etc.?
I mean, I've done improv, and I think I'm not excited to do improv that much anymore. I obviously acting. Doing my solo show was really, really like, I think it was a good experience, and it was a good opportunity to explore something that, like, wasn't the right thing for me to do in stand up, and I would love to do more stuff like that. I've never tried directing, but I think that what I actually would be interested in learning how to do, that, like, I don't know if it was on your list, but, like, I think it would be, like, one of my friends produced her own film last year. It's called Otherwise a Woman. I'll plug it. It's called Otherwise a Woman, and my friend Miriam Raymond produced and starred in it. And producing a film seemed like a lot of work, but also, like, a lot of interesting challenges in terms of, like, making sure that everything happened. Haven't really done a lot of that. I mean, I guess I like technically produced my solo show, but that was a lot fewer moving parts because it was mostly just me. So I think that'd be something that I would like to try a little bit more. And I would like to keep sort of like writing more like longer form vehicles for myself or other people to act in, like my solo show in addition to doing stand up. I think like one of the things that's sort of interesting right now is like all the things that like used to exist don't exist in the same way right now. So figuring out like what's an art form that like works over streaming and working on that is something that's like I have been thinking about and should be thinking about more. Like I know you said Larry Fulford, who nominated me for this, you probably talked about his Zoom show that he's been doing that actually like really lends itself well to Zoom. So kind of like thinking about things like that is something that I would like to do more of that I haven't been doing.
Most definitely. Larry's such a great guy.
Yeah.
Yep, I love chatting it up with him and all that good stuff. And he puts on really great Zoom shows too, so
Yeah.
all that good stuff. And with your solo show, I'm having my very first one next month. So any pointers you can share would be fantastic. So
Ooh, that's great. Are you doing it like live in a theater? Or are you doing it
at
streaming?
a horror themed coffee shop in the middle of the forest in Florida. So it should be
Cool.
pretty interesting. So it's called Stories on Sunset, and it's a mixture of like my journalism days in LA, mixed in with like my stand up at the end, and it's and how I got to LA, and it's just it'd be like first act is how I got to LA, what was the reason, and the second act is my concert journalism days and my adventures, and then my third one and how I became a superhero, and then my third act is going to be stand up, and it's like all my dirty material, but with no curse words, so gonna be pretty fun. So,
Awesome.
yep. So I'll have that filmed, and so and we'll see if I need more practice or not. That's all I can do. So
Yeah.
I love the live setting stuff. See what happens.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Indeed. And so let's see here. Where do you see your comedy career in the next 5 years?
That is a question that I would have been easier to answer prior to COVID. I I don't know. I think the next 5 years, I would like to um obviously keep doing stand up and get to a point where like I think okay, some things that I had wanted to do in the near-ish future were get like enough material that I really liked organized into like an album and do an album. Um I wanted to I was thinking about moving to LA because I'm really tired of winter, but I ended up not doing that because it didn't make sense to move in the pandemic. But like ideally 5 years from now, I would be somewhere besides Chicago that is warmer, just for my own peace of mind. And I would like to have written more longer form stuff. I'd like to like have more scripts written, and I've been working with a theater group, and I was hoping to like write a play for that, and I haven't done that yet, but that's another thing. So like I guess I would say that I would like to have written more scripts, put together a set of material for an album that makes me proud that I would want to share with people, and then live somewhere warmer.
Indeed, most definitely. And let's see here. If uh, uh what is your favorite joke a comic has ever written?
um Favorites? Yeah, this is very on the spot. Let me try to think of one. Um I'll say this is like okay. I don't know. I don't know what to, I'm like deciding between a lot of different directions for answering this question, which means I'm taking it too seriously. Um Something that like pops into my head that I think about a lot that like I feel really bad because I don't remember whose joke this is. It was somebody I saw at a festival. It was a comic from New York, but I don't remember her name. But it was just like a throwaway line in a story where she was like, I feel shitty doing this because I'm not able to credit her, but she was like, a restraining order is basically a document that tells a guy you have one more chance to kill this woman. And it's like super dark, but it's also super true. And I like, the reason I like jokes like that is that it's like telling people something that they need to know and hear and understand, but it's like packaged in a way that like makes it more consumable than if you just like angrily go up to someone and be like, restraining orders don't work. Like nobody's gonna be able to like process that. But when you put it in a joke like in that form, it's like telling like a really important truth. And so I really like jokes like that. But then I also really like just like dumb Mitch Hedberg jokes that are like, rice is great if you want 1,000 of something. And it's like, that's also a truth, but not nearly as serious.
Indeed, I love that one too. And what experience would you like your audience to take with them after a set is over?
What would I like? I mean, what do I want people to take? I mean, ideally, I want people to sort of laugh, but then also think. But then sometimes my sets just aren't that profound, and actually most of the time. So I don't think I've achieved that yet. But I guess worst case, I just want people to be like, that was funny. I had fun for 10 minutes or whatever.
Indeed, most definitely. And let's see here. Let's see. Uh, so as a friendly reminder, there's all of Liz's information's on the bottom that you can follow her on social media, and we're also raising funds for SPLC with this interview. So donate to them if you can, and donate to Liz's Venmo too, which is scrolling on the bottom too. And during the pandemic, we're trying to help out as many comics and nonprofits and charities that we can. And subscribe to her YouTube channels as well. So that'd be awesome. So with that being said, Liz, thank you so much for being on the show on the Stand Up Speakeasy. Is there any final words you'd like to give to the audience out there?
I guess just thank you for having me on the show, and please don't judge me too hard for not having a lot of favorites ready to go.
You're totally fine. Oh, I almost forgot the third and final segment of the show, which is you nominate my featured guests to be on the show, like Larry did for you. And so with that being said, which open micer would you like to see on the show?
I remember I watched Larry's like segment of this, and I kind of feel the same way he does, where I don't know how to like label people by their level of comedy. Can I just nominate 5 people?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So let's see. I think I'll start with some people that I ran shows with in Chicago at various points that are great are Jackie Cooper and Sabine Sadiq. I don't know if you've talked to either of them before. Or Caitlin Chekarowski, who's actually running a show right now and that I got to do in August, and it was really fun. Aaron McDavis is also a comic who is still running a show in the pandemic, and I did that last week, and it was fun. And then I mentioned my boyfriend who I'd like to go on tour with. His name is Dylan Scott, and he has a really great album, and you could talk to him. I'm sure he has a lot to say about comedy, and that's already 5. I think also I have a good friend in the Chicago scene is Sharoop Kareem. He's really funny, and I know he's been doing a lot of writing. So those are some folks. I know that some of the people that like Larry nominated are people I've also worked with on shows, so I won't re-nominate them, but I recommend all of them too.
Awesome. You'll have to help me with the spelling of their names if you can after the show, and then so I can reach out to the correct ones, because I reached out to the wrong ones once, and I'm like, oh, never again. I'm not gonna do this again.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, let me know if there's anyone you're looking for. I can help you out.
That'd be awesome. And Liz, I'll piece everything together and I'll put it on my website as on my publication, and I'll send it back to you so you can put it on your press kit and all that good stuff.
Okay, awesome.
Awesome. And thank you again. And follow Liz on all the social media, subscribe, donate to all those to her Venmo and to her charity and nonprofit of choice. Visit her website, book her if you can, and all that good stuff. So with that being said, thank you so much for being on the show, Liz, and I look forward to meeting you. I plan on going to visit in May and August, so and
Awesome.
hopefully we'll meet each other there, and we'll go and have lunch with you and your boyfriend, and we'll chat it up some more. So that'd be fantastic.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Awesome, Liz. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Take care.